Welcome to the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the second quarter of 2022. Welcome to Lesson 4 from the series on Genesis. It's titled The Flood, ready for teaching on April 23, and my name is Percy Harrold. Tuesday, April 19, the end of the flood. Genesis chapter 7, verses 22 to 24 describes the overwhelming and comprehensive effect of the waters which destroyed all living things, in verse 23, and prevailed on the earth 150 days, verse 24. It is again this background of total annihilation and hopelessness that God remembered in chapter 8, verse 1. This phrase is situated in the centre of the text covering the flood, an indication that this idea is the central message of the flood story. Read Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. What does it mean that God remembered Noah? Genesis 8, verse 1. Then God remembered Noah, and every living thing, and all the animals that were with him in the ark, and God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. The verb �𝐶𝐎, Z-A-K-H-A-R, or remember, means that God had not forgotten. It is more than just a mental exercise. In the biblical context, the God who remembers means the fulfillment of his promise and often refers to salvation, as you read in Genesis 19 and verse 29. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. In the context of the flood, God remembered means that the waters stopped, as you read in Genesis 2, verse 8. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were also stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And that Noah will soon be able to leave the ark, as you read in verse 16. Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Though no direct command is yet given to leave, Noah takes the initiative and first finds a raven and then a dove to test the situation. Finally, when the dove does not come back, he understands that the waters were dried up from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, as you read in verse 13. Noah's behaviour is rich in practical lessons. On one hand, it teaches us to trust God even though he does not yet directly speak. On the other hand, faith does not deny the value of thinking and testing. Faith does not exclude the duty to think, to seek, and to see if what we learned is true, and yet Noah goes out only when God finally tells him to do so, as you read in Genesis 8, verses 15 to 19. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and cattle and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and whatever creeps on the earth, according to their families, went out of the ark. That is, even when he knows it's safe to leave, Noah still relies on God and waits for God's signal before going out of the ark. He waited patiently within the ark, as we read in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 105. As he had entered at God's command, he waited for special instructions to depart. At last an angel descended from heaven, opened the massive door, and bade the patriarch and his household go forth upon the earth, and take with them every living thing. And so to finish the day, read Genesis chapter 8, verse 1, Genesis 19:29, and Psalm 106, verse 4. What does the expression God remembers mean? What does this truth mean for us now? That is, how has God shown you that he remembers you? Genesis 8 verse 1 reads, Then God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided, and chapter 19, verse 29, and it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. And Psalm 106, verse 4. Remember me, O Lord, with the favour you have toward your people. O visit me with your salvation. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.